Hello, everyone. I am Queen T, also known as Priestess Ifapomele Omowari Ogunyomi, and my beautiful co-host is.
Hey y'all, I am Brandy A. McPherson. The cool kids call me Bam, and I am Priestess Ajay Aigbe, the community priestess.
So today, in this episode of Politics of a Priestess, we are talking about separation of church and state. So I love articles. I love research. I love things. So I literally am going to be reading an article to you. It's a whole page. And I will put the little thing, it'll scroll at the bottom so you can kind of find it. It's from nps.gov. And it it adds some interesting history. So again, part of the reason for this series is because most people don't actually understand the history of our history. We don't understand the underlying themes, the people, the choices and decisions that led to us being us. And so this is some of these are going to be really informational. It's going to be packed full of information because the goal is to teach you something so you understand something, so you know how to move so that you can change something, because it's crazy out here. So we're talking about separation of church and state. Okay, so the article is now scrolling at the bottom. So remember last time I talked about Roger Williams. Well, he's back. Okay, we're going to talk more about Roger Williams. Okay, so the earliest mention of the separation of church and state comes from Roger Williams. He was a Puritan minister who founded a new form of government based on this idea. Williams referenced a high wall between church and state to keep the wilderness of governments out of the affairs of religion. Essentially, he wanted to stop the chaos and immorality of government from invading the purity of a person's conscience and their freedom to find their own truth or salvation. Today, we view the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment. Mind you, this is the First Amendment. Everybody always talks about the Second Amendment, but we don't be talking about the First Amendment. And the First Amendment is the first motherfucking amendment. Like, this is here for a reason. And we completely blow past that one at all costs and just focus on the right to bear arms and the other silly things that had to be put in there because we have to explicitly say that you can't do this or else people will think they can do it. That's what our Constitution is. So anyway, moving on. Today, we view the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment as preserving our religious liberty by preventing the government from establishing a religion or not preventing the free exercise thereof. But even more profoundly, the form of government that the Constitution creates was designed to limit the authority of the government to civil issues only. It does this by making the people the sole authority of the government. As a result, it protects everyone's individual liberty to worship or not to, however they choose, without the government being allowed to intervene. So let's talk about the divine right to rule that was over yonder across the pond. So before the founding of the colony of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations, which is today known as the state of Rhode Island, governments claimed to derive their authority from a god. In some cases, the supreme leader of a country was considered a god. Ancient Rome or Japan until 1945, for example. A political system called theocracy. I know I'm saying that wrong, but whatever. Look it up. Theocracy. It looks like theocracy. So that's what I'm saying. Y'all know what I'm saying. Anyway, so if any inhabitant of the country dared to question the authority of a law or magistrate, a magistrate is a government official, they could be accused of defying the law of their god or gods. Historians refer to this system of power as the divine right to rule. In the few centuries after the fall of the Roman Empire, many European kings chose to adopt Christianity as the official religion of their kingdom. Over the centuries, Christianity became the dominant political structure that bound these kingdoms together. During the reign of Henry VIII, Pope Leo X granted him the title Defender of the Faith. It was an effective tool to solidify England's bond to Spain and other Catholic nations. In this way, political power was consolidated across Europe. Much to the dismay of European powers, Henry broke from the Catholic political structure and established the Anglican Church, or the Church of England. Henry argued that he didn't need the Pope's permission because he ruled by the grace of God alone. Mind you, we are talking about Henry VIII. Starting in the 1530s, Henry ruled England as both the king and the head of his own church. England had a representative body, Parliament, but it could only meet when the king or queen allowed it to. By the early 1600s, it was well accepted in England that the government carried out the will of the Christian God through the king and his church. But a group of religious radicals disapproved of the practices of the Anglican Church, believing that they were too ritualistic. They argued that their own simpler and more spontaneous way of worship, reliant on the Word of God or the Bible, was the true way. With their words, as well as acts of civil disobedience, sedition, treason, and violence, they insisted on worshiping how they saw fit. In the eyes of the king, they were challenging both the spiritual authority of God and the political and spiritual authority of the king. As a result, many were given the opportunity to establish a new colony in North America. So that's the other side of the coin to what we talked about in the religious colonization of America. So now we're back to the Puritans in America. In the Massachusetts Bay, Plymouth, and other colonies, because Plymouth was actually a colony and Massachusetts was Bay, it wasn't the state yet. Puritans set up new governments with the same source of power, religious authority. These governments claimed that their right to rule was granted to them by the Christian God, and therefore they had absolute power to punish people for their thoughts, beliefs, words, actions, and even their bad luck. People were humiliated, shunned out of town, fined, beaten, mutilated, tortured, and unalived. These acts of punishment weren't for violating civil laws, but for interpretation of divine laws. In 1736, this punishment happened to Roger Williams. In the winter of, did I say 1736? I meant to say 16 if I did. In the winter of 1636, Roger Williams was banished from his home in Salem for preaching new and dangerous ideas. New and dangerous ideas. Such as religious freedom and spiritual equality. Those are new and dangerous ideas. With his arrest imminent, he fled. His goal was to reach New Amsterdam, which is New York, where he would be free to practice his religion. Instead, he was offered refuge by the, I'm not going to say this word because it almost sounds like a slur. It's Narragansett. Narragansett is what it looks like. But I feel like if I say it the wrong way, something's going to float in my house. But Narragansett. He was offered refuge by the Narragansett in a place called Moshassuck. Okay, so that's Moshassuck. I said shuck instead of suck, but y'all know. I'm gonna assume that these are indigenous names because that makes no sense. That's not a regular English. Anyway, Roger renamed it Providence, and before long, several English families were living there. To protect their individual freedom to follow what faith was right for them, Williams and his followers chose to create a government that had limited powers. This was a radical new idea. The laws of this government would only address civil matters. This government would derive its authority from the people who live there. It would have the power to decide issues such as taxes, public works projects, property laws, and military affairs, and would have no authority at all over religious or spiritual matters. And because they needed a fair way to make decisions without drawing on a religious belief that not everyone believed in, they chose to use democracy. So, democracy. Most people believe their God is flawless. Okay, as a former church-going Christian, that is basically what you're taught. God is perfect, right? God makes no mistakes. God doesn't do anything evil or bad or anything like that. So, if a government claims to derive its authority from a flawless God, then any decision made by the head of state must also be flawless. Therefore, the power of that government is unlimited. Roger Williams argued that this mistake in logic was responsible for the death of millions of innocent souls whose only crime was having their own unique conscience. But when the power of the government is limited to only civil matters, it becomes possible for democratic systems to emerge. In democracies, citizens and or their representatives make decisions. Because people are imperfect, the system allows for flawed or less than perfect decisions. And bureaucracies and democratic systems can be repaired and made better over time. By limiting the power of government only to civil matters, everyone is free to worship according to their own conscience. The government doesn't require that its citizens believe that it is the authority of an almighty force or a deity to create and enforce laws. The consent of the governed or the people is enough. So now let's talk about this here Constitution. Thomas Jefferson, in his letter to the Danby Baptists, reiterates that religion is a matter which lies solely between man and his God, that he owes account to none other for his faith or his worship, that the legitimate powers of government reach actions only and not opinions. I contemplate with sovereign reverence that act of the whole American people, which declared that their legislature should make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, thus building a wall of separation between church and state. Is it possible that Jefferson was inspired by Roger Williams to use that wall of separation metaphor? We may never know. The First Amendment prevents the government from creating or establishing a religion and thereby prevents the power of the government from expanding beyond civil matters. The First Amendment also protects people's right to worship however they choose and not to worship any God at all. Protecting people's right to decide what is right for themselves regarding religion and spiritual matters without government interference is a key foundation of our democracy. In 1788, our nation's Constitution was ratified with the opening words, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." It's a long run-on sentence, and I wish they used a little period somewhere in there. Anyway, this sentence assures all the world that the United States government derives its authority from the people, and that in striving for a more perfect union, it is flawed and can and should be changed to reflect the will of the people. These aspects of the Constitution were designed to ensure our liberties into the future. That is the article. Link is down there. Priestess? Sorry, I said a lot. How do you feel?
For me, separation of church and state is like synonymous with the First Amendment. It's like they go together, right? But then, and this is something that happened, I just had this thought, like it's not even in my notes or anything. Like as you were talking, I'm thinking about what it says, and you broke it down really good. You know what I mean? It says, Congress shall not make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. and this may be slightly off topic, but it's the only thing I can keep thinking about currently, is the irony in that when I think about the native boarding schools, and I know in just our personal conversations, I keep bringing this up, but specifically here because native boarding schools it was one of those things that I really didn't know about. I wasn't educated about them in school. I was big, good, and grown before it was something that I found out about on my own and I've done research about. These schools were oftentimes funded by the government, ran by different Christian denominations, and Christianity was forced upon these people. They were told that they cannot practice their indigenous spirituality. They could not practice their indigenous tongue. They couldn't wear their hair long and they had to cut their hair. But my brain is just thinking about, the Supreme Court lawsuit that I'm sure someone has thought about. I'm sure there are certain circles that are having this thought about it, maybe, I'm assuming. But just the unconstitutionality, if that's even a word, of something that happened somewhat recent. Like when we think about the signing of the Constitution, we're proud talking about 1776. But in 1940, 50, and 60, we were telling people what they can practice, what religion was right, and that what they wanted to practice was wrong. So
that goes back to that very first video that we had where we talked about the religious persecution, quote unquote religious persecution that they were escaping, and then they came and implemented themselves.
Exactly. But I think so, like I said, that's one that is screaming in my head, and I'm sure I'll have more downloads about that. And I don't know what we're supposed to do with that, but there's something, because that was unconstitutional. We knew it was but that was unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
But we see it, I feel like, in other stuff too. So just if anybody is wondering, well, what, I think earlier, one of the other episodes, you had even mentioned some modern day examples. It's like we have modern day examples too of like separation of church and state being challenged, other than just those native boarding schools. When we think about just public prayer and how we have precedents that say, no public prayer in schools, but that's always being discussed. And even the religious symbols that are put up in places, government buildings, not only schools, and in schools, and
the Pledge of Allegiance.
In God we trust being written.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Which God? Because
and like the money right now, and God we trust.
Because they're not all the same. The Abrahamic religions as a cluster worship the same God as a cluster. But what about everybody else?
It's that hypocrisy. That word, it comes up again. And I think this particular question or segment, just talking about separation of church and state, has really highlighted how that's almost something that's just said. Like it's just said, and we're fighting for it. I see the relevance in the day-to-day. So like you said, we do community work. I'm very big on, I want my Muslim student to feel just as comfortable as my atheist student, as my Christian student. I'm really selective about if we do things in churches. Community stuff, I always want you to do stuff at the church, but everybody is not comfortable coming into the church. So, and even praying during certain events, I get separation of church and state. I am one of those people that advocate for it. But this conversation has highlighted that on an institutional level, systematically, that's kind of just a pretty phrase that is said. But
I've heard Republicans specifically, and I'm sure there's Democrats that do it too, but I've heard Republicans specifically call this a Christian nation. And we ain't supposed to be doing that.
It's literally unconstitutional to say that. Yes. So it's kind of like that, reading it in black and white. Like we're asking all of you guys to do. Go read that thing in black and white and see if you don't feel any different or feel convicted behind it. Because right now, I got some things I need to talk to some people about the First Amendment. It's not the second, it's the first. The First
It's
Amendment.
the First Amendment. It's the very first thing. And we're just like, nah, that's not important. Where's my guns? You can't take those. But we, child, and we will talk about this a little bit later. We're going to talk about the Black church and the pandering to the Black church, and we're going to talk about what the Black church is actually doing. But it's not just the Black church; it's the churches in general. Their influence on schools that shouldn't exist, and how they're kind of lumped together in certain aspects. Certain funding is like it's lumped together, and you get more funding if you have a religious based school that is Christian. There's like loopholes for Christian schools that other types of schools don't get. It's like, I want a school for ATR children who are being raised in hoodoo and voodoo and Ifa, Santeria, Kudulumbe, all the things, right? I want a school for them because they are basically not taught their things because there's nobody teaching them on a bigger, grander scale. If their family didn't learn it, then they don't learn it. And there's plenty of families where they would love their child to do that, but it's just not available, right? So that's big goal. Y'all learned a big goal of mine today. That's big goal up there. But there's no funding for that. There's no loopholes for that. There's no earmarks for that. But if I wanted to start a Christian school, oh, it would run. It would absolutely run quickly. It would take me maybe all of a year to get everything I needed and have my school up and running and flourishing because it's a Christian school. But anything else, no. I feel like Muslim children should definitely be able to have a school. We have a large Muslim population in this country at this point. Large, ridiculous. They have Jewish schools. One of our egg bay, their child goes to a Jewish school. They have Jewish schools. I don't really see no Muslim schools. And that's a huge part of our population. They should be able to have a school, but it should have the same chance as a Christian school and the same resources as a Jewish school. And they don't.
Yeah. So I didn't realize, I'll have to look some into the preferential treatment that's given to the Christian denominations. But something that became really highlighted in my area, I can say a few years ago. It's weird now getting older and being able to say something happened a few years ago, Anyway, so I guess it was a few years ago now when it was like a lot of discussion about those, like the private school vouchers. So like we give the private school vouchers and like scholarships and stipends and things to folks that want to, go to a private school instead of a public school. Now that was already a huge conversation because people feel like public dollars should go to public education and that us taxpayers should not be picking up the tab for someone to go to private school. That's one whole conversation, whatever, right? From under the same umbrella, though, it came out that those dollars, those stipends could be used for religious academies, for like religious schools, Christian academies.
They are. Yes. A lot of Catholic schools are private.
And that was a huge hissy fit, or caused a big hissy fit, because the whole separation of church and state, should government dollars be going to fund religious institutions? So that was just something, like when you said that, I'm like, yeah, we had that conversation around here. It became a thing. But now, me, that community side, when you bring up the like the Hebrew schools and the Jewish, my brother went to a Jewish Catholic school, I'm sorry. And then, the Hebrew schools are so big. Some of that, now this is, hey, politics of a priestess, right? Because we're actually out here in our communities. That one, I hear it and I'm like, that's something we have to do. Because we already know that, like you said, the money gonna move funny when we tell them we're talking about African tradition. When we say African, Okay.
Right.
We say Black and cultural, but so many of these, like the Hebrew schools, when they have to go, like they have to go, it's like culturally, it's just ingrained that you have to go. They're willing to put dollars behind it. And so with that, it's like I want to, we got to do it and not wait for the government because we know how what that looks like and build something for our babies. So that made me excited, and I'm more so touching and agreeing with you on that and saying we got to build it because we can't wait for them to build it.
Now we did have here. It was called Afrocentric, and it was. I don't know what the curriculum was because it was started after me. It was after I was already like through the process. I wasn't able to attend Afrocentric, and my kids are in a different district, and because of the district my kids are in, I didn't want to take them out of the district to go to the Afrocentric school, because of the problems with the district and the problems with the schools in the district because people don't vote for levies. So let's talk about this real quick since we're talking about this. Please, if there's a school levy on the ballot, read it. Please read it. Please read what it is that they are asking this money for and why. And understand that it only comes out of your taxes if you pay property taxes. It only comes out of property taxes. So if you are renting an apartment, baby, you're like indirectly paying that tax, but you're not directly paying that tax. Your rent's going to go up anyway, baby. Your rent is going to go up almost every year anyway, unless there is some type of stabilization of the economy where it's not necessary. But we all lived in the past 4 years, all of us that are big grown, okay, fully grown adults in our 30s, we all have lived through the past few years and we know how inflation went up, okay? But that money didn't go to the schools in my area because they almost never vote yes. So my kids are in a different district because these white people, they vote for their schools, okay? They vote for their local stuff and they will tell you exactly what it is for and what's it going to do, and they will cut something down if it's bullshit, okay? But they vote for their schools, and that's why my kids' elementary school was a top 100 school in the nation, because they actually vote for the schools. The other district where the Afrocentric school is, those people don't vote down the ballot. I just saw something today, and again, we'll cut this off after this, but I just saw something today. It was another video by a creator that I love. She does parking lot politics, basically. It's a beautiful Black woman. She's beautiful. Priestess, I'll send you the link. But she was talking about how because people don't vote down the ballot, things get missed. So they vote, especially Democrats. And that's part of the problem, because since Republicans in some cases really don't want government in anything, so they almost vote no for everything because the government shouldn't be involved. Like, no, let them figure it out themselves. Keep the government out of it, which again can be good things, but sometimes it goes too far. So because Democrats aren't looking at these things, they aren't voting down the ballot. I live in a Democratic city. So because the Democrats aren't looking at the school levies and reading them and understanding them, they don't get passed. So we have schools and students suffering that shouldn't be. We have so many people in this city to where if everybody said yes, or enough people said yes, and then those people that pay taxes and pay property tax pay it, the schools will be in much better condition. But they don't vote. And so now it's affecting schools, and people are mad at the school board, blaming the school board. They're mad because they got another fundraiser to do. They're mad because they feel like their kids aren't learning anything. The teachers don't have the resources to do it. And people forget about that part. So that's my soapbox.
That was a perfect illustration. You know, we've kind of been fighting this battle together since before election season was technically here, since before early voting actually opened up, where we've had, you know, those people that say, I don't vote. I don't see the purpose in voting. My vote doesn't count, whatever, you know, and that's a perfect illustration on why voting on the community level, the local level, does make a difference. Like, of course, we notice, we talk about disenfranchisement of certain people, and you're saying that over there where the Afrocentric school is at, that word that I shouldn't even say, them folk over there, they not even voting. You know what I mean? And so it's like we see the direct parallels between being knowledgeable and actually, utilizing your civic, because I don't want to even call it a duty. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get your voice out there. The people that use it, it looks like some of their situations are a little bit better. Then we look at those that won't use it, and we see that things aren't shining quite as bright. I just think it's a great illustration that we can use to say your vote does matter, sis. Your vote does matter, bruh. Like, we're not just talking about president. Yes, it matters. But like good sis just said, we talking about the schools that our babies have to go to. We're talking about the sidewalks that you have or you don't have in your community. We're talking
about potholes, baby, the potholes.
The pothole, yes, the potholes that's tearing your car up that you still got to pay taxes on, but you not gonna make no moves to.
And you ain't paying for no alignment. I need an alignment too.
Girl, I need alignment right now. Facts, okay. So we know. Yes to all of it. Yes to all of it. So
we're gonna talk about some more of these things more in depth as we go. So we are definitely going to talk about voting down the ballot. It's a whole episode. Don't worry, child. We got you. But yeah, that's it for the separation of church and state today. So let us know what you think in the comments. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, talk in the comments. Give us ideas of things that you want us to talk about. Whatever, do it down there in the comments.
Now,
and y'all have a wonderful day and peace.